Every Thursday, several of the friars, we go to the abortion clinic on 12 Case Street down in Norwich to pray for an end to abortion and to protest. And for some reason, the last several times, there's been some interesting episodes. Last week, we had he was a young boy, probably 14 or 15 years old, by himself. There were 5 of us. There were only 5 of us this time, adults. And this boy was laughing at us and ridiculing us and shouting at us that God was fake and not real. And so this brings up the point that I've spoken of before, the fact that we can know God exists, we can know other things about God using our reason alone. And the example of this boy, and really not him, because really a better example would be an adult, somebody educated, etc. But in any case, it brings up the question, then, if that's so, then why don't more people believe in God? Why is atheism, why does it seem to be making progress today? Probably more so in England than in the United States, but nevertheless here too. And to answer this question, I want to cite a passage from Pope Pius XII's encyclical, Humani GenerisAve. He says, "Though human reason is, strictly speaking, truly capable by its own natural power and light of attaining to a true and certain knowledge of the one personal God, who watches over and controls the world by his providence, and of the natural law written in our hearts by the Creator." Okay, so there we have the affirmation that natural reason alone can know something about God and of his law, the moral law, the natural law. Yet there are many obstacles which prevent reason from the effective and fruitful use of this inborn faculty. Okay, there are obstacles to us using our reason properly in order to attain to a knowledge of these truths. For the truths that concern the relations between God and man wholly transcend the visible order of things. We can't see them. And if they are translated into human action and influence it, they call for self-surrender and abnegation. This is the first crucial point. Because if through our reasoning we come to a knowledge of things of God and the moral natural law, well, the consequences are that we are to surrender ourselves to this God. Abnegation, we are also to deny ourselves and also to observe the natural law. That's the first obstacle, because there presents a difficulty for man. The human mind, in its turn, is hampered in the attaining of such truths, not only by the impact of the senses and the imagination, but also by disordered appetites, which are the consequences of original sin. Disordered appetites, disordered passions that we have to deal with, that aren't entirely under the dominion of our reason and our will. So it happens that men in such matters, those things of God and his law, easily persuade themselves that what they would not like to be true is false, or at least doubtful. Is false, there we have the atheists, or is at least doubtful, as in the case of the agnostics, who will neither deny nor affirm whether God exists, but simply say we cannot know, which is quite convenient in the face of the fact that we would have to submit ourselves to him and observe his law. And so this is why God reveals himself. Okay? He doesn't give us just that ability to know certain things of him through our reason and his law, the natural law, but he reveals himself because of our own weakness and stubbornness. And he reveals things about those religious truths about himself and moral truths which of themselves are not beyond the grasp of human reason, so that even in the present condition of the human race, that is, our fallen, weak condition, these things can be known by all men with ease, with firm certainty, and with no admixture of error. So that's why we have God's revelation and miracles, etc., which give evidence to these things. And we see these elements in the first reading of the Mass today, from the book of Kings, with the prophet Elijah and the people of Israel before the prophets of Baal, and the contest, so to speak, between Elijah and the prophets of Baal. We see Elijah speaks to the people of Israel, and he says, "How long do you halt between two sides? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him." How long do you halt between the two sides? This calls to mind what we just read by Pope Pius XII, where he says that men will persuade themselves that these things be false, or at least doubtful. We don't want to deny or affirm, and that's what we see in the Israelites. They didn't want to deny that God is God, but they didn't want to affirm it either. And there's a footnote, at least to this commentary I see, that says, because on the one hand, they could not excuse themselves before the charges of Elijah, but at the same time, they did not want to sever themselves from the worship of Baal and the pleasures accompanying it. And so the people, feeling the justice of his reproach, made no answer. They were ashamed and afraid. And here again we see, the pleasures that accompany the worship of Baal, pleasure, they were ashamed and they were afraid. Pleasure, shame, and fear. Here we see coming into play three disordered passions, which will influence how their reason works. The passions have influence on our reason, if we allow them to. But they felt the justice of his reproach. That is, his words pricked their conscience. And yet, nevertheless, they made no answer. They made no answer. That was their choice, their own free will. They chose not to respond to the call of their conscience through the prophet Elijah. And so what happens? Through the prophet's prayers, God intervenes with a revelation, so to speak, by means of a miracle, an enormous miracle, consuming with fire the stones which were soaked in water, the whole altar, the Holocaust, everything. So that, again, as Pius XII says, that they could know with ease, with firm certainty, and with no admixture of error, that God is God, and Baal and his prophets are false. And so, today, we want to, like the prophet, we read at the end of this story between Elijah and the prophets of Baal, that he then, after the miracle, he retired from the multitude, went up alone to the top of a mountain, where he prostrated himself before the Lord in praise and thanksgiving. And this should be our response, because we've seen similar interventions of God in our own day. Think about the miracle of Fatima, the miracle of the sun, which Our Lady told the children was prophesied beforehand and then accomplished before 80,000 people. Think about the church this year, the 40th anniversary of the death of Padre Pio. The church decided to exhume the saint's body, present it as partially incorrupt, which is a miracle, for the veneration of the faithful. Again, to reinforce our faith in God's revelation and the other truths of the faith. So we want to do like the prophet, give praise and thanksgiving to God for his interventions, for revealing himself to us, for the miracles that he provides to strengthen our faith. And we also want to pray for those, all of those, especially that young boy who was at the abortion clinic. Pray for all of those who are still without faith, that they may receive this certain knowledge of God and his laws and be inspired to embrace it with all their heart. Praise be Jesus Christ.